Welcome back to this module. So in this module, we're going to start the creation of the BMI Calculator application. So let me first show you the application that we're going to build in this entire module. So this will be the final application. So you can see we have this BMI Calculator that has this drop down. So from this drop down, you can select the gender. So if I select here a female, then here we need to enter the value of the age. Like if I enter here a 55, then we need to enter the height in inches. So if we enter here, like we have split the height into two different modules. The first is for the fits, the second is for the inches. Then we need to enter the weight. So it is going to be like 49 weight. If I click on calculate, then you can see it is actually a normal weight. Now if I refresh it and if I select here a male, I enter here like 45 age, height is like 5 and like 2, and the weight is also like 40. If I click on calculate, then you can see now the category of the BMI is underweight, and this is the body mass index value, which is 16.13. So this will be the final application that we are going to build in this entire module. So our first step is to start with the HTML part of the project, which is BMI Calculator. Now for the HTML part, I have already created the three files inside the Visual Studio Code, which is index.html, style.css and script.js file. So I have already linked the style file with the use of this link tag and also the script file with this particular line of the code. Now the first step is we need to actually wrap the entire code inside the container. If I show you the final version of the application, so this is the final version of the application that we want to develop, and this will be the application that we're going to develop in this entire module. So I have launched the application inside the Chrome browser with this live server extension. So our first step is we need to start the container, and then we need to place these form elements. So we are going to use the form, a different approach than the previous project. So coming back to the index.html, so the first thing is we need to specify the container. So I'm going to use here a container, which is a emit plugin, which gives us the division code. Inside of the container, I will be using the h2 element, and then I will be here specifying the heading to the BMI calculator. Alright, so this will be the heading for the BMI calculator, which is a h2. So if I come back to this one, which is the project that we will develop in this entire module, now you can see h2 element BMI calculator is actually visible to the browser. After that, we need to add here a form element. Now we don't need any action because we are not using any backend server here. So then we need to specify the ID. So ID is going to like BMI form. Then we need to specify the some spaces. Inside of the form, we need to place all of these elements, which is this particular selection, or I can say that the label. Then this is actually a selection. Inside of that, we need to add these options, which will act as a drop down, but it is not a drop down, it is actually an option inside the selection input element of the HTML. Then we need to specify the label again, then with this input type, which is the number, because we are dealing with the numbers. So coming back to the this one, which is a project that we want to develop in this entire module, and then coming back to the index.html. So the first thing is we need to add the label. So the label here, inside of that we need to specify the for value to gender, and then we need to here specify the text to the label, which is gender. And after that we need to use here a select, and then we need to here remove the name one because we don't want to use the name. Inside of that we need to specify the ID, which is going to be gender, and then the main thing that we want to actually specify inside this select tag, which is the option elements. And also we need to actually add here a required attribute, because without that we actually don't want to calculate the BMI. Then we need to add here an option. The first option is actually for the male, so here we need to add the value to male, and then the text to that particular option will be male. Then I'm going to duplicate it by pressing the shift, alt and down arrow key. Then it's actually create a duplicate for the first line. Then here I will be adding the female, and then also I'm changing the value to female. Alright, so now the selection is actually completed, which is the first element. You can see now this selection is actually appeared inside the web browser. After that we need to actually start the creation of this age element. So coming back to the BMI one, and then here coming back to the index.html. then I'm pressing a 1 enter, and then I enter here a label. So for that we need to use the age, and then we need to specify the label value to age, and after that we need to add here a input. Then the input type is going to be number, because we are actually working with the numeric values, so that is the reason we need to specify here a numeric value, which is the input type number. Then I have specified here a id, which is age, because later on we want to fetch these IDs inside the JavaScript file. We want to actually bind these IDs to the JavaScript variable so that we can provide some logic to these input elements. And after that we need to add the placeholder attribute. Inside of that we need to provide the enter age, and then this is also required, because without this we actually don't want to calculate the values. Alright, then we need to provide the another label. Not a label, it is not a label, it's actually a label. And then for this one it is actually for the height. This is for the height, and I can enter here a like height feet, because it is having two values, because here we need to specify the two input type. Then the value for the label. Okay, and then we need to actually press the enter key to come back to the next line. So first we need to specify here another input, and then the type is going to be number. Then here we need to specify the id, so it is like id, which is going to be height feet, and we need to provide here a placeholder. So the placeholder is going to be like feet, the placeholder that will be visible to the UI element. If I just refresh it, this is a placeholder that is we specified here. And then this is also going to be required, not read only, it is going to be required. And after that I'm going to just simply create a duplicate of this one to save a little bit of the time. Then instead of height feet, we are now going to here use the height in inches. Height inches. The input type is going to be number. Then only changes with the id name, and also we need to here change the placeholder to inches. Alright, so that's for the height one of the inputs. Now the next we need actually a weight. So this weight is coming back to the index.html again. So here I will be typing the label. Then 4 is actually going to be value for the weight. Then we want to display the label, which is like weight. Make sure the first character is a capital one so that it looks good. And then we need to specify the input type. So input, and input is going to be number, because we are dealing with the numeric values. Then it is actually going to be required, and then we need to specify the id. So id is going to be like again I need to specify here id, and id is like our weight. Alright, and then we need to specify the placeholder. So placeholder is going to be like enter weight in kgs. Alright, so this will be the placeholder for this input element. Okay, so this will be the input. If I zoom out a little bit so that you can see the code more clearly. Alright, so that marks the completion of the all input elements for this form elements. The next element that we need is the button. So we need to specify this button also. So here we need to specify the input, and then at this point of time we will be using the input type submit, and this value is actually going to be like calculate. The value that is this one, the text will be visible to the button. So if I enter here a calculate BMI, and if I control save it, then you can see all the input element is now visible to the browser. Now all of them are actually coming to the single line. That is because the input, we can tell you, because their display is actually like inline, all of them. So we need to actually set these input type in a column like structure, where that we will do in the CSS part of the project of this BMI calculator. Now the last element that we want is actually to get the result. If I enter here a value like I enter here values like 56, so this is actually a result element. So after the end of the form element, we want to display the result. So make sure you are outside of the form element, and then here we need to create the another division. So this is actually for the result. So we need to specify the id, and this is going to be the result. So now you can see the result is not going to be visible. So if I enter here like then it is going to be visible here, but we don't want to display it, because at the initial we want to display the form look like this. So when we click on the button, then we want to display the result. So that marks the completion of the code for the HTML part of the BMI Calculator project. In the next part, we are going to start with the CSS part of the BMI Calculator. Now it's time to start with the CSS part of the BMI Calculator project. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see the CSS code more clearly. So this CSS file is already linked with the index.html with this particular line of the code. So I'm opening the style.css file. So instead of that, first I'm going to change the background color. If you see the final version of the application, you can see there is a blue color in the background. So we want to apply the background color to this one also. So for that, we are going to use here a body element. So body, and inside of that, we will be using the background color property. So hash character, then 349, and it is going to be like 8db. So this will be the color for the final project. Alright, and then we need to actually use the container, because inside the container we have all the other elements like the form, the h2 element, and also the result element, which is a division tag. So inside of the container, I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to start the body of the container, just removing this array bracket, closing element, and then closing the block. So the first thing is, inside the container we need to specify the max width. So max width property is going to be like 400 pixel, right? And then I need to provide the margin property. So margin from top is going to be like 200 pixel, and it is going to be auto from the left and right. Then you can see now the BMI calculator content is coming to the center of the web browser. Okay, and then we need to add the padding. So padding is going to be like 20 pixel, and then we need to add the background color. So background color is like hashtag F2. So this will be the color that I'm going to use for this particular project container, which is the division container for the BMI calculator. Then I need to provide the border. So border is going to be like 2 pixel solid border, solid, and then we need to provide the color. So it is going to be like 1E, and it's like F, which is 5F, and 8A. So this will be the border color for the BMI calculator. Alright, and after the border, we need to add the border radius so that we can get some rounded corners, so which is going to be like 5 pixel. And then we need to add the box shadow, which is a favorite property, which gives us a 3D look to this particular project, like 10 pixel blurriness. And then I need to use the RGBA, which is 000, and the alpha value is going to be 0.2. Now you can see there is a shadow is applied to this particular container. Okay, so that marks the code for the container. Next, we need to add the element code for the HTML, which is a heading tag. Then it is going to like margin top. So margin top is going to be 0. Alright, and then we need to add the color. So color, we need to add a dark black. Alright, and then we need to add the text like alignment. So it is going to be the center of the container. And then we also need to add the text decoration, which is underline. Okay, so now you can see there is a underline is applied to this BMI calculator heading. So that's marks the completion of the code for the h2 element. Then we need to add the code for the form element. So we need to start the form block. So the first thing is we need to add the margin. So margin from bottom. So this is like our margin bottom property, and it is going to be like 20 pixel. Right, and then we need to add the display. So display is going to be like flex. So now everything is actually aligned to the one single line. So we need to actually use here a flex direction. So flex direction is going to be the column 1. Now all of the elements is now appearing like up in one column. So that marks the code for the form. Now we are going to handle the label and the input elements and the selection element one by one. So the first we need to actually style the label. So I'm going to select the label tag directly, and inside of that I will be adding the code for the label. So the first thing is we need to use the font size to large, and then we need to add the font weight. We are also going to increase the font weight to 600 pixel, and then we need to add here a margin bottom property, because right now they are very close to each other, so we need to actually provide some margin. So now you can see margin bottom property is applied, and then we need to add here a color property. color, and then we need to add some dark black color. So that is for the labels. The next we need to add the code for the input and also the selection. So I'm going to combining the two selectors. So here I will be using the input. Then need to specify the type also inside the array brackets. So type is equal to, so we are actually using the type here number. So make sure you need to specify here a number, and then to specify here like comma operator, like comma, and then we need to also provide the select. So in the second line I will be specifying the select, and then we need to start the block line of the code, means start the block of the code. Then to provide the width, so width is going to be like 95%. Okay, and then we need to add the padding. So padding is going to like 10 pixel. You can see now the padding is increased. And then we need to add the border property. So border is going to be like none. Alright, if I control save it, now you can see the border is removed. Then we need to add the background color. So background color is like #FF, which is a pure white color. Then we need to add the border radius so that we can get rounded corner, which is 5 pixel. And then for the 3D look, we need to add here a box shadow property. So it is going to like 0 pixel. Then for the blurriness, it is going to be 5 pixel. Then we need to use here RGBA. So you can see now it's actually gets a 3D look. Okay, and then after that we need to add here a margin bottom property, because right now these two one are actually very close. So that is the reason, or also this weight one is very like close to this particular button. So that is the reason we need to add the margin bottom property, which is 10 pixel. Now you can see the problem is fixed. And also when we actually come back to this focus state of these elements, we want a blue color, like you can see this blue one. So for that we need to actually change its focus state. So I'm going to copy this one and pasting it here, and then inside of that I will be using here a focus. Okay, and also for the select one we need to use here a focus. It is actually a pseudo class. Then we need to close the block of the code. So inside of that we need to actually here use the outline. So outline, right now you can see there is an outline is coming. So we want to remove that outline. So outline, and then we need to set it here none. If I save it, so when I click on this particular focus button, then you can see the outline is removed. The next thing is we need to apply the box shadow. So copy the box shadow code from here, paste it, and then we need to provide here a hexadecimal notation color. So we can use it here a color like this one, auto suggesting the color. If I click it, then you can see now we get this particular effect. So the next thing is we need to specify the code for the button. And also you can see there is a one problem. If I just come back to here, these is actually similar width is applied to this input, because and this one is actually also having the similar input. But the problem with this one, you can see in our one, these are not same. So to apply the same style, we need to actually select the selector. Okay, we need to select the selector. So here we need to add the width to like 100%. So now you can see the width is exactly the same to these all other input elements and also this particular button. Now the next step is we need to actually provide the style for this button. So for that, instead of selecting the button, because right now you can see it is not a button, it is actually input type submit. So we need to select the input type submit. So I'm going to actually copy this code from here and just removing the focus state. Alright, and just remove the one bracket, and here we need to use the submit. Okay, so this is will be the input type submit. The first thing is we need to add the code for here like a padding. So padding is going to be like 10 pixel, and then we need to add here a margin top property. So margin top is going to be like 10 pixel, and then we need to add here a background color. So background color will be like this one. I control save it, and you can see. Then we need to add here a border property. So border is going to be none. Then we need to add the border radius. So border radius is going to be like 5 pixel, so that we can get a rounded border. Okay, and I can just go with the 3 pixel because 5 pixel is too much for this particular button. Okay, and then we need to add the color property. So color is going to be like #FF, and then we need to add the cursor property. So cursor is going to like pointer. Okay, and then we need to add here a transition property. So transition, and we need to apply the transition for the background color. So I'm going to copy this here, paste it, background color, and it is going to be like 0.3s, which is like ease. Okay, and then we need to apply the hover state, hover pseudo class for this particular button, paste it, close the block of the code. Then here we need to specify the colon and then the hover. Okay, and then we need to change the background color. So it's like hashtag 2187b5. Control save it. If I hover over it, you can see the color of the button is changing with the proper transition effect. So the last element that we want to style is the result element. So it is an id, so that is the reason we need to use here a hash character and the name of the selector. Inside of that, first we need to add the font weight. So the font weight is going to be like bold, and then the margin top property, which is like 20 pixel, and then the color. So color is like this one, which is 349. So if I control save it, right now it is not visible, but if I enter here some values, control save it, then you can see the style is applied. Alright, so I'm going to remove it. So now the designing of the project is completely done. So our next step is to start with the JavaScript part of the project. So that we are going to do in the next part. Now it's time to start with the JavaScript part of the BMI Calculator application. So for that we need to use the script.js file. And this file is already linked inside the index.html with this particular line of the code, which is script tag, and inside of that we have specified the source script.js file. Now coming back to the script.js file, and inside of that first we need to get the id of this particular form, and then we need to add the listener, and then we need to listen to the submit event. So first I'm going to type the code, then I will be explaining you in more detail. So document.getElementById. So here we need to specify the id of the form element, which is this BMI form. So I'm going to copy the id, and here I will be specifying the id name. Then we need to add the event listener. So we want to listen to the submit event. So inside the single quotes, I'm going to specify here submit event. That is this one, and we are actually going to here pass a one function with the parameter e. So this e parameter is actually having a purpose here. So inside of this e, we are actually going to call here a prevent default. So this actually used to actually stop the default behavior of the browser when we click on the submit button, because by default when we listen the submit button, whenever we fill up the entire data, if I click on the submit, then the page will be refreshed and navigate to the different page. This is a default behavior. So in order to stop that default behavior, we need to provide this function, which is e.prevent_default. Alright, so this particular line of the code does what? So it's actually first fetching the id of the form, then we are setting the listener, and then we are actually listening to the submit event listener, and then we are actually passing the function. Inside of that we are calling this e.prevent_default, which actually basically stop the page to be refreshed. And after that we need to actually get the IDs of all of these particular HTML elements. So for that we need to create lots of constants. So here I will be using the const. So this is going to be like gender. So this is actually like document.getElementById, because we have specified the IDs inside of these all input elements. You can see ID age, ID gender, and ID like these height, feet, and inches. So that is the reason we are actually here using the getElementById. And inside of that we need to pass here a gender, which is the ID of the first element, gender. Okay, and then we need to here pass the dot value, because we want to get the values from these input elements. So that is the reason we need to actually pass here a value. If we don't specify a value, then we actually getting the entire tag name, like this entire select tag will be initialized to this particular gender variable. Okay, so that is what we actually want to do. So the next thing is we need to actually get the value of the age. So we need to again create here another const, which is age equals to, and then here we need to use the parseInt function, because by default whenever we get the value of the HTML elements, we are actually getting the string values. So that is the reason we need to wrap this entire code inside the parseInt function. So here inside of that we need to pass the document dot get element by id, and then we need to specify here a id. So the id of the age is age. Alright, so here inside the single quotes I will be specifying the age, and then we need to here pass the dot value, and then we need to terminate that particular parseInt function. Okay, so if we don't use here a parseInt, then we are getting the inappropriate values, because by default whenever we get the values from the HTML input form elements, then it is going to be treated as a string. Actually it's give the value in a form of string, so we need to convert that string value into integer, because we are working with the age number, which is a single entity number. So that is a reason, or I can say that the positive natural number. So that is the reason we have used here a parseInt. Similarly, I am going to duplicate it into 3 more times, because this one is for the height in feet. So here I will be using the height, and I am going to use here a camel case typing. Then this is going to be like height in inches, and this one is for the weight. Okay, and then we need to change the corresponding id values. So the age is done, then we need to provide the height feet id. So the second one is for the height feet id. Then we need the height inches id. So I'm going to copy the height inches id. I'm just using here a copy paste because I don't want to make any mistake. Also I'm actually recording a tutorial, so that is the reason I'm using here a copy paste of the id names. Okay, so now all of the IDs are fetched with proper parseInt function conversion. Now there is a one thing, instead in this particular weight one, we are going to use here a float, because a weight can be in a form of point, or also we have a value of the BMI will also be coming in a form of decimal. If I can enter here a value like female, enter here like no, age is not like this number, you can add a check here. It's totally up to you how we want to add a check, calculate it, and then you can see it's actually giving us a point based value. I can say that the float value. So that is the reason I have used here a parse float. So we are getting, then whatever value we are getting it, we are converting it into a float. Okay, so the next step is we need to check whether all of these values are entered. If all of these values are not entered, we don't want to actually calculate the BMI calculator. This is the one. This will be the final version of the application. This is the one that we are actually developing in this entire module. So for that we need to add here a condition. Also inside the HTML part we have added the required field, but still inside the JavaScript we want to add a check for the condition. Then all of these values are entered, then we are going to perform the BMI logic. Also you can see input type I have specified here a number, but still I have used here a parseInt function. Although we are getting the numeric values, but still there may be a chance that that value will be treated as a string value. I already explained to you that why we use the parseInt function here. And then inside of that, coming back to the logic part, we are going to specify the if condition, and then we need to start the if block. Inside of that, first we need to check whether the gender is gender, then and operator, and then we are going to use the age. If all of these values, then height in feet is this one. So if all of these values are entered, then we want to actually execute the if block. So now we have to add here variables. We are going to calculate the height first, and then we are going to calculate the BMI, and then we are going to fetch the result element IDs. Inside of that we will display the result by updating its inner HTML. So let me first type the code, then I will be explaining you. So first we are going to create here a variable which is height, and I can say that the height in meters. Okay, so we need to convert the height into meters. Because why I am saying the height in meters, because we are providing the height into two different formats. Means we are providing height into height in feet and height in inches. So first we need to convert the height into inches, which is this fit one. Then we need to add these two values. So that is the reason I have added here height in meters, and after adding the height fit value which is converted into inches and also the height inches which is this one, then we need to convert it into by multiplying with our value into meters. So I'm going to type the code, then I will be explaining you what I will be saying here, then it will become more clear to you. So first I have added here these kinds of brackets, the height in feet. So first we are going to convert the height in feet into inches by multiplying it with the value 12, and then we are going to add it with the height in inches which is providing by with this particular variable. So now we have converted the height into inches, and after that we need to multiply this value 0.0254, which is an approximate value like 0.0254 meters in an inch. So in 1 inch this particular value exists. So we are going to multiply this with the entire inches value, then we are getting the height in meters. If I enter here a comment, height in meters. Okay, so after getting the height in meters, then we need to add a logic to calculate the BMI, which is a body mass index. So body mass index is actually based on the weight. So here we need to get the value of the weight, which is we will get with the use of this particular variable, which is weight, and then we need to divide this particular value with the square of the height in meters. So height in meters. So make sure we don't use the height feet and height inches values while calculating the BMI, because we calculate the height in meters. So height in meters multiply height in meters, because the body mass is actually based on the fat of the person, which is the weight divided with the square of the height. So then we will get the BMI value. Alright, so this will give us a BMI value, and after that we need to actually get the result, which is the result element, which is this particular element, that is this one. So we need to actually get the value of this result element. So result element I have named the variable, then document.get element by id, because we have used the id selector, so that is the reason. So we are actually fetching the values, so that is the reason I have used here a result instead, and I don't use a dot value because we want to display the result, but also we want to display the category, because right now in the final version of the application you can see we have the category value. So according to the value of the BMI, we want to display the category as well. You can check the value of the BMI variable by just console log the statement. I don't want to do that because I know that this will calculate the BMI, because I already tested the logic. So here I will be using let category, because we want to display the category also, whether the overweight, normal weight, or like underweight. These are the categories we want to display. Alright, so if we want going to perform here some conditions, if BMI is actually smaller than 18.5, then we want to display the category value. So it is a category is actually equal to, we want to display it underweight. So this will be the first value that we want to display. So if it is not okay, then we are going to perform here else if block, else if condition, and we want to check it whether the BMI value is greater than or equal to 18.5. So if it is that a case, and also we want to check for the AND operator BMI, if it is smaller than 24.9, then we want to update the value of the category variable to like normal weight, and here we also need to actually provide the underweight. Alright, and if it is not a case, then we also want to provide the another else if condition, not escape, else if condition, then BMI value. So BMI, if it is greater than equal to 25 and BMI value is smaller than 29.9, If it is data case, then we want to update the value of the category variable to overweight. So this will be overweight. In the else part, we want to display obsess, which is a category, obsess, which is, I think I pronounced it right, which is like OBECE. Alright, so this will be the category value will be updated on the basis of the BMI value that we will receive according to these particular inputs. After that, once we get the category, we get the BMI, it's time to display the result by updating the inner HTML of the result element. So here we need to actually create another variable which is result message. Result message is equal to, so first we need to construct the full message. So that is the reason I will be using here a single quotes, your BMI, and then I need to concatenate it. So to concatenate we will be using a plus, because plus can be used to concatenate the value. So here I will be using the 2 fixed, so that after the float value I will get only 2 decimal point values. So here I will be using the 2 fixed 2. It is not too much difficult, you can just simply Google it if you don't know about 2 fixed. It is a very simple. Then I will be adding here a BR tag, so that the category will be displayed in the next line. Alright, and then again I will be using here a result. So here actually I forgot to add here a result. Actually I have added a result message. Then we need to add the plus, and then we also need to initialize it. So whatever previous value, the new value will be retained, and also the added the category, means the body mass index value alongside it was also going to have a category value. So it is like category, and then we need to provide here a column, and after that we need to then provide here a category value and terminate it. And after that, at the end, the result element value, which is the inner HTML dot inner HTML, and after that we need to provide the result message. Terminate that, control save it. Now the code of the entire BMI calculator is completed. If I enter here a value like male, if I enter a weight like 40, height like 4.9, like 4 feet and 9 inches, weight is going to like 40. If I click on calculate, then you can see normal weight for the male person. If it is the age of 40, if I like 22, click, then you can see still it's going to display the normal weight. Now we need to refresh the page for the female one. If I enter here another value like 55, height is like 5 and 9 inches, and if the weight is like 80, click on calculate, then you can see it's going to display the value which is like overweight, and the BMI value is 26.05. Again, if I refresh it, and for the male one, if I enter here a 45, height in 5'6", if I enter here a like weight like 25, then you can see it's actually underweight. The BMI score is 8.90. Now the entire BMI calculator application is working fine. So if you have any problem, then you can use the Q&A section, or if you like this video or this entire module, then please leave a review, because your review definitely going to help me to reach more students. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next module. Thank you very much.